All right, getting started on this side, going to show you the process pretty much step by step. I don't know what all kind of editing I'm going to do for it, but it's pretty much going to be a full walkthrough. You can see the full process. So it's always intimidating because you're like, well, where the hell do I make the cuts for the hole? I mean, where is it? Well, this is the best tip that I will probably ever give anybody. It's really easy and you shouldn't be intimidated at all. You should take a small Sharpie, small highlighter, whatever kind of short little guy you got. But you want the small ones. And we're gonna take it. How am I hooked on there? There we go. You're gonna take it and you're just gonna insert it into your spot. We're gonna gently put the panel back on. So that's roughly where this panel is going to sit, and this is going to give me a good idea of where to start to make my cut. But you're going to loosely pull the panel back, and actually this one's really tight to get. I can't get my hand in there. There we go. Alright, so that's lined up. This one's actually a little bit more challenging. There we go. All right. So you just take your fingers, kind of wiggle that around. Hopefully we left a decent mark. Pop, where it is. So that's where we're gonna make our first cut. And that's how you do that. It's the easiest way to do it. Most of the time there's never a template or something. So it's always daunting to figure out where to make your first cut. You never wanna cut from the painted side or the actual outside of the fairing. You always want to do the inside and make that incision like that, and make that mark rather, not an incision. I don't know why I'm like a doctor. To do our first cut, we are going to using this is really nice, so you can like gauge and go start out small and just kind of go a little bit larger. But eventually we're gonna usually, and like depending on the frame slider and how it mounts to the actual bike, you could get away with only using this and not even needing a Dremel. But a step to drill bit like this is really helpful in this process. You can also, once we get this mark here, so like, okay, that's my mark, you can also have a larger, something that's meant for drywall work. That just punches like a big hole, and they have large drill sizes for that. I don't particularly like that because, like you saw there, it is still kind of hard to get your hands back in there and try to actually leave the mark on the fairing. But also you can see too, you know, this is not, there's a lot of wiggle room here. So I could have been marking like this or like this at a weird angle and not dead center. This is really just how you get the best guide. So if you mark it like this and then you go straight to a, let's say something that's meant to cut through drywall, and it's this large, your whole diameter that you're going to be drilling is this large, and you choose that as a center point and you drill it, you have a perfect circle, which looks great, but it could still be off by a little bit, and then you still have to Dremel a little portion out of it. So I don't prefer that method. If you want to go ahead and do that, that is up to you, but that is another method that you could use. Small one like that, and then we're going to put it back on the bike, and we're going to take a look and look down in that hole to see if we're close to dead center here. And if we're not, we'll make a little bit of a change and go back. So this is lined up. You know, line up whatever kind of holes you need to do. I'm gonna look down in there. Don't know how well that's gonna come out on camera, but that's pretty darn dead center actually. I'm really happy with that one. That one actually came out better than the first one. So now I'm really happy with how that looks. I don't know if I caught that on camera, but I'm gonna go ahead and just drill it out and make it pretty large. So once you have a good guide for a hole, also what I'm gonna be doing too is looking, so like on the other side, the rectifier for your bike, or regulator, whatever you wanna call it, was mounted like right here, so we had some wiring kind of in the way. So I took that off the bike as well during this process. But basically right before you do this mount, where you're happy with this hole and you're like, okay, I'm potentially gonna be Dremel, this is where you use the Dremel at this point. You wanna make sure that there's nothing behind here that you could potentially hit. Like if this clutch cable was down further and going to interfere with my cut, you're gonna wanna either just move that out of the way temporarily or something like that. So make sure at this point that there's no wiring or anything in this area that you can potentially mess up using the Dremel. You can see, oh, look at that. That's beautiful. Love it. All right, we're gonna get this on temporarily. Here we go. Something that kind of sucks is the fact that this is an aftermarket body kit, so it's not, the fitment's not the best. Aftermarket ones never fit great. Even the really high quality Monster fairing kits, which I highly recommend that you put on your bike if you are doing an aftermarket kit, they are really nice, but at the end of the day, they are still Chinese kits, guys. They're just, you know, pretty good quality. They're much better quality than this one for sure. I'll probably do a review on those later, by the way, because we installed quite a few of them, and I might be doing one on one of my personal projects this winter. So get subscribed. All right. As you can see, we are a little off in our hole there. Not cool, but that's okay. It looked better initially, but now that we have it bolted in place and we kind of know where everything's going to be sitting, you can see that we're a little off. But that's still pretty darn close, which is cool. That's at least a really good starting block. Because what I need is this to fit in there like that. So I need to Dremel out a little bit more this way, and that's what I'm gonna do right now. The Dremel, you are gonna be using the sandpaper versions, like a sandpaper attachment. And also, I don't know what this one's called, but it just looks like a weird little drill bit. This is perfect for cutting out fairings. I am gonna cut the audio when I do that because it is obnoxiously loud. Personally, I probably should be wearing earplugs when I do it, but it's up to you. So don't be afraid to do what I'm about to do, because again, I know that I'm going to be cutting even larger portion out of it, because you can see this doesn't go all the way back, and the frame slider puck is going to be screwing onto this particular one all the way down here. So I'm going to be making a much larger cut in a little bit to fit that puck. But I need this to fit right now. Since I'm going to be cutting more away later, I don't mind just leaving a scratch. Be a little careful so that you don't like completely slip and mess it up somewhere else, but there we go. All right, so that's where my outline for my cut. Pull the fairing back a little bit, or you can undo one bolt and pull it back. Maybe you want to put another bolt in here to make sure the fairing somewhat stays in place. What I typically do as well is sometimes I'll hold it such like this. I'll just hold it in a bunch of weird ways so that I can use it as a guide. I'm pressing it up against my body, the Dremel, and I'm gonna be slowly going around, because sometimes if you're just truly freehanding it like this with one hand, you know, there are times where the tool will get stuck and grab something, maybe it'll grab something behind, and it'll just whack and throw you out of where you're wanting to go, and you'll make either a weird cut or it'll slip out completely and you'll hit the fairing somewhere else or scratch something else, whatever the case may be. So always have like a couple points of contact on the tool and make sure that it feels like it's stable so that you can easily guide it through. Perfect. Looks beautiful. See, that's really good. Now I'm gonna grab the puck that goes on there, which is right here. By the way, the frame sliders that we're installing today are T-Rex racing frame sliders. They make a lot of great products. I don't think they're on our website right now, but you can check out the link in the description below. We might have on our website. We also will have other frame sliders on there like PSRs, Vortex frame sliders, stuff like that. You can purchase directly from us on our website. We'd greatly appreciate that. That would be awesome. But one of the reasons why we're doing T-Rex today is because everybody else was out of stock. T-Rex was the only one that had a set in inventory. So, but if you're local to us here in Gaithersburg, we are a T-Rex dealer, so you can get them directly from us. Just stop in our showroom and yeah, we can get you set up. So now that that's on like that, if you wanted to be lazy about it, you could just like screw this in and it would kind of, you know, pull the fairing in. You can potentially crack it, damage it later. We don't want that. So we want to do another cut. Instead of using this one, we are going to use this pick, which has a little bit of a curve to it, or any kind of curve pick. That way we're going to get on the inside of it, and we're going to kind of just leave another inside scratch going all the way around as best that we can. So that gives us a rough idea of where I'm going to be cutting to this time. And again, this may look all terrible and stuff like that, but it cleans up in the end. Just wait a second. Oh no! Give that some juice. Alright, I think we're looking pretty good. We'll be smoothing this out in 1 second. Alright, we need a little bit more there. And honestly, everywhere else will be good. Got a little bit too much right there, unfortunately. But hopefully this nut will be in that spot, which will work out well. Alright. So we've done enough cutting. Now we're going to switch over to this once my battery charges, because I don't know where the other one is. I used to have two, but I don't know what happened to it. We'll be right back. Okay, now that we have it basically fully cut out, I know I need to do a little bit more on this side and on the top. Bottom is pretty good on this way. So we are going to use the sandpaper version now at this point, because that doesn't eat away as much of the plastic, and it also will smooth our edges out. Smoothed out, looks really good, but we need more, just a little bit more, right here and right there. Ta-da! Perfect. Beautiful. Sweet. Okay, so that was it. That was pretty easy. Super easy, right? If you do that process, you always get a really good fitment out of it. Clears completely. It's not grabbing anywhere or anything, and that way you can, you know, the fairings can flex a little bit, and it's not going to grab and possibly create cracks over time, and just has a very clean look and fitment to it. This one still was just a little off, a little bit of a more of an air gap, mainly down here, but thankfully that was, you know, below, so you don't really notice it as much, but looks really good. I'm really happy with how that's going to turn out. So let's put it all together and take a look at what it looks like finished. Something also I did forget to mention is you're going to want some way to support your engine when you're doing this. You don't want to, it's not jacking up the engine or anything, it's literally just, you pretty much set the jack to where it's boop, just touching and just applying pressure to the bottom of the motor, because obviously the cut frame sliders or the same sliders that require fairing modifications typically are using mounting points that are also motor mounts. So you're going to want to make sure you have the motor supported in some way, which I forgot to mention earlier, but that's very important. Some bikes it doesn't matter as much depending on what kind of setup it is and what bolts you're actually using, but for the most part you're going to want that. It just makes sure everything stays level basically and doesn't move around. All right, let's clean this up and see what it looks like when it's done. It's a pretty simple process to install frame sliders, and you shouldn't be too afraid to have to cut your plastics as long as you do the right process, and then also have the right tools. It can make the job a lot easier. You can see these came out looking really good. Really happy with that, how clean it is. And what's awesome about this is you can take these fairings off without having to even remove the pucks if you don't want to. And that's honestly how every frame slider should be installed. If you're installing frame sliders and you're modifying the fairings like this, you should always cut the hole large enough to where you can just pull the fairing off without having to remove the frame slider. Because if you have to do that every time you're doing an oil change, you can damage the threads just from over time use. These have to be torqued pretty tight. So when you start damaging them, it's getting really annoying to repair them. So trust me, just if you're doing frame sliders, always cut it to where you can just take the panels off and you don't have to bother removing it. We also did a powered phone mount from Tech Mount. Really cool mount that you can charge your phone and just have it mounted right there so it's easy to see GPS or something like that. Highly recommend those because it's pretty universal. It'll fit any phone just about, and the benefit of that is, like, if you're swapping bikes in between your buddies or something halfway through the day, everybody can use that mount, versus like some mounts you have to buy a special case, phone case for it. Then when you get a new phone, you have to get a new mount, all this other kind of stuff. So it's nice to have something universal like that that's sleek and clean. So that's basically it. Check the description below. You can find links to our website where you can get all the parts and tools that you would need to do an install like this. We don't sell Dremels yet, but you can find everything else on there. And get subscribed, give us a like. We'll do more fun videos like this, and we'll see you in the next one.